Welcome to The Explainer. Listen, if you're a parent, a caregiver, or frankly, just a human being trying to navigate our hyper-connected digital world, you've probably felt it. That very real, completely overwhelming anxiety about the screens in our lives. It's practically a universal feeling right now, isn't it? We are constantly bombarded with messages that our devices are literally hijacking our brains, rewiring our kids, and just setting us all up for this dystopian future. But we really need to ask how much of that is actual hard reality and how much is just moral panic. Well, today we are going to unpack the real science behind our digital habits. We'll be drawing heavily on the brilliant insights of psychologist Dr. Jacqueline Nesse from her Techno Sapiens newsletter. And we'll look at the actual neurobiology and pediatric guidelines to separate fact from fiction.
It's the million-dollar question, right? The one that keeps us up at night. Are kids truly addicted to screens? It is a terrifying thought, and let's be honest, it generates a ton of clicks online. We hear people claim all the time that a child's brain responds to an iPad the exact same way it would to illicit drugs. And, it sounds totally plausible when you see a toddler absolutely melt down because you took their tablet away. But before we just accept that sensationalism is absolute fact, we need to completely deconstruct what is actually happening on a neurochemical level. Let's separate the internet myths from the clinical reality.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, the screen addiction myth. Second, dopamine, motivation, not pleasure. Third, the slot machine effect. Fourth, addiction versus problematic use. Fifth, the displacement hypothesis. And finally, we'll wrap up with finding balance and moderation.
Number 1, the screen addiction myth.
So, the internet has done a remarkably good job of convincing us that smartphones are essentially hard drugs for the developing brain. And right at the very center of this massive popular panic is one incredibly misunderstood chemical: dopamine. We've been led to believe that every single ping or notification triggers this toxic flood of it. But I want you to really look at this quote from Dr. Jacqueline Nesse. She states it point blank, despite what the internet has told us, dopamine is not the feel-good chemical. Wow. That kind of shatters the whole myth we've been sold, doesn't it? We tend to picture dopamine as this, toxic Las Vegas-style party chemical that just gives us a euphoric high when we get a like on Instagram. But the reality of what dopamine actually is and what it does in your body is so much more nuanced and honestly way less sinister.
Section 2. Dopamine, motivation, not pleasure.
Okay, so if dopamine isn't just this magic pleasure juice, what exactly is it doing? Well, dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's produced by cells deep inside your brain, and it is absolutely essential for just basic, everyday bodily functions. We're talking movement, cognition, sleep, dreaming, learning, memory, and get this, it's even involved in prolactin, which regulates milk production. Just think about that for a second. The exact same chemical that gets blamed for your kid's screen time is also responsible for a mother producing milk. So no, it's definitely not just a toxic party chemical. It is a vital, everyday worker that keeps your body running. But its most famous role is in the brain's reward system, where it acts as a massive engine for motivation.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction in neuroscience, drawing on the research of Kent Berridge. There is a huge, fundamental difference between liking something and wanting something. Dopamine is heavily tied to the wanting part, what scientists actually call incentive salience. Dr. Nesse uses this fantastic hot fudge sundae analogy to explain it. Imagine if you somehow completely blocked all dopamine activity in someone's brain, right? And then you gave them a hot fudge sundae. They would still like it. They'd still experience that in-the-moment pleasure, the rich taste of the chocolate and the ice cream. But without dopamine, they simply wouldn't have the motivation to go seek out another one later. So dopamine isn't the pleasure itself. Dopamine is the chemical that basically taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, remember that? That was awesome. You need to figure out how to do that again."
Number 3, the slot machine effect.
So how exactly does this intense wanting mechanism interact with the apps we use every day? Well, a simple like on social media acts as an abstract social reward. We are a highly social species. Humans are quite literally biologically wired to value social approval. Historically, it's what kept our ancestors alive. So when you get a notification, it kicks off this anticipatory dopamine loop in the brain's mesolimbic pathway. That's the exact same ancient hardwired circuitry that responds to primary survival rewards like food. Because engaging with screens is fun, naturally dopamine gets involved. It's just telling the brain, hey, remember this, it felt rewarding. These platforms are basically just piggybacking on our totally natural, human drive for social connection.
But here's the catch. Social media companies don't just rely on our need for social approval. They rely on incredibly careful, intentional design, specifically, unpredictability. In psychology, they call this a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, because you never know exactly when you'll get a like or what's going to pop up when you pull to refresh your feed. Your brain gets locked into this constant state of high anticipation. Just think about the literal physical motion of pulling down a feed to refresh it on your phone. You pull, you watch the little wheel spin, and you wait to see what you get. It perfectly mimics pulling the lever on a slot machine. That algorithmic unpredictability maximizes your dopamine release in states of uncertain anticipation, and it keeps you endlessly motivated to try just one more time.
Section 4. Addiction versus problematic use.
Okay, so if these apps act like digital slot machines, we really have to ask the obvious question. Why isn't smartphone addiction or social media addiction an official diagnosable condition in the DSM-5? Well, Dr. Nessie is quick to point out that adapting clinical addiction criteria from other areas without being incredibly careful is actually pretty dangerous. True clinical substance addiction involves a direct chemical alteration of the brain, and you have to meet these very rigid clinical criteria, like severe physiological withdrawal and physical tolerance. Screens, on the other hand, work indirectly through behavioral reinforcement. We actually don't have definitive concrete data showing that kids' dopamine systems respond to screens precisely the same way they respond to hard drugs. If we just go around assuming everyone who uses their phone a lot is an addict, we run a huge risk of deeply over-pathologizing totally normal behavior. So instead, experts prefer to focus on what they call problematic media use, or PMU. PMU exists on a spectrum, which is great because it realistically allows for a goal of moderation rather than demanding total, basically impossible abstinence from all technology.
But the absolutely crucial point here is that even if it's not categorized as a clinical addiction, problematic media use is a very real and very measurable issue for a certain chunk of the population. Clinicians actually use tailored tools like the PRIA screener to look for specific warning signs. And I want you to seriously reflect on these for a second. Are you using your phone significantly longer than you meant to? Is it actively messing with your job, your kids' schoolwork, or face-to-face time with your family? Is it causing tangible anxiety or leading to chronic sleep deprivation? Because these are the actual real-world metrics we need to be paying close attention to. We really need to evaluate the tangible impact on our lives rather than just panicking over the scary word addiction.
Section 5. The displacement hypothesis.
All right, this brings us to a foundational concept in media research, and honestly, it's the core takeaway of Dr. Nesi's work, the displacement hypothesis. This is where we finally uncover the actual, most tangible danger of excessive screen time. This hypothesis suggests that the primary harm for kids often isn't the glowing screen itself. The screen is not a radioactive poison. The real danger is what the screen time is crowding out. Think about a teenager who stays up until 2 a.m. scrolling endlessly on TikTok. The primary damage isn't just the algorithm doing something to their brain. It's the simple fact that they are displacing critical REM sleep that their developing brain desperately needs to function. Or think about a young kid who misses out on learning complex physical and social cues because their head is completely buried in a tablet at the playground. Are those hours on a device displacing outdoor play? Are they replacing studying or face-to-face socializing? It's not inherently about the technology being toxic, it's about the massive loss of essential developmental activities that create a healthy, well-rounded human being.
Which leads us to Section 6, finding balance and moderation.
So, what do we do about all this? We really want to shift away from just admiring the problem and empower you with some actual evidence-based solutions. First, let's look at the concrete benchmarks from the American Academy of Pediatrics. For kids under 18 months, they recommend avoiding screens entirely, though they do make a nice exception for video chatting with grandma and grandpa. From 18 to 24 months, you can introduce high-quality programming, but you really should co-view it with them to help them actually process it. For ages 2 to 5, the limit should be about an hour a day. And for kids 6 and older, it's really about placing consistent limits to ensure media never displaces that adequate sleep and physical activity we just talked about. Now, quick aside, it is so important to remember that literally nobody is perfect. These are guidelines, right? Not rigid laws that make you a terrible parent if you break them on a 6-hour flight. But having these benchmarks really helps ground us.
Of course, broad guidelines aren't quite enough on their own. We need a daily framework. So here are a few actionable steps to help foster some real digital self-regulation in your home. You can start by applying concepts like the 5 C's of media use, which basically means focusing on the child, the content, the context, and so on. Create a family media plan. Maybe designate media-free zones, like ruthlessly protecting the dinner table or keeping phones entirely out of the bedrooms at night.
But honestly, perhaps the single most important step here is modeling responsible screen use yourself. We absolutely cannot expect our kids to put their phones away or develop healthy boundaries if they see us constantly doom scrolling during family movie night. Kids emulate what they see. Finally, if you do notice persistent real signs of problematic media use, don't hesitate to consult a pediatrician or a mental health professional for some guidance, rather than just resorting to a strictly punitive, ban all screens forever approach.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a deeply reassuring reality check directly from Dr. Nazy. I want you to just take a deep breath and remember this. Just because dopamine is involved does not mean screens are dangerous or toxic. Dopamine is not a cause for panic. It's just how the brain works. Your child's brain is not broken. Your brain is not broken. It is functioning exactly how human brains have evolved to function when they're presented with rewards and social connection. Finding moderation is entirely achievable once we just step back, remove the panic, and understand the actual mechanics at play.
So, we've looked at the real neuroscience. We understand the digital slot machine, and we know that displacement is the real enemy we have to watch out for. So I want to leave you with this final, incredibly important question. Knowing how all of this actually works, how will you rewrite your family's media narrative today? Take back control of your time. Focus on balance over perfection. And I will see you in the next explainer.